Now on today's video, we're going to try to make some carbon fiber sheet from cloth and resin. This is a basic video, a 101 for people that have never done carbon fiber work before. I've tried not to leave out any steps, try to make it simple, and try to give plenty of alternative ways of doing things along the way, as well as the way I do it. Keep in mind, carbon fiber can be a little bit tricky to use, sometimes disappointing, but once you pick up the basics, the 101s, you can make complex parts very easily, very soon down the road, and we've made a lot of them on our channel. You can put my name in quotation marks and the subject, and up will come that video. Now today I want to make some carbon fiber sheet from carbon fiber cloth and resin. I'm going to show one way to do it. There's many other ways to do it. This is the way I've done it in the past, and it seems to work pretty well. Relatively easy, straightforward, and we're going to be making some parts from that sheet when it's done for our MT-09. Now pretty much all the bikes in my collection, my small humble collection, have some parts that I've made from carbon fiber. I have spare parts that I put on video, making a windshield for this bike. We made a carbon fiber windshield, made an exhaust system for the R1. There's different methods to each part that you do. This is going to be a relatively simple, like a 101, how to make a sheet of carbon fiber. Now, of course, you can always just go and buy a sheet, but it's relatively expensive. This way, it's a lot less expensive to do it, and you can make as much as you need whenever you need it. I need some sheet to do parts for the MT-09. I don't need to make more than I really can use in a reasonable amount of time. But if you have shop conditions where you can lay out a bigger piece of glass, a bigger piece of whatever, well, it's good. I'm limited in space, time, and of course I try to do everything on a budget. So if you're new to the channel, you can look up any one of these topics by putting my name in quotation marks and then the word carbon fiber. Up will come various parts for every one of these bikes have been made, and they're all on video on my channel. And most of these parts are unique, things that you really can't buy. And the side covers on this motorcycle, these are handmade, the part under the windshield among other things. But it's not difficult to do those type of parts, but it's a good place to start somewhere simple. And we made the brackets for the MT-09. We made all of these parts, and they're all on the channel. Made them within the last year. In fact, what we're going to be trying to do is lay out a piece of carbon fiber big enough to do these two pieces. And it's a relatively simple job, as I said, and I'm going to try to pass on the way that I've done it in the past. Now on our project workbench, we previously made from Cheerios boxes the two patterns that we know we're going to be making these two parts out of sheet carbon fiber. So the first thing I need to do is lay out how much space I need, how many square inches I'm going to make. If I did have a bigger shop, and I would make bigger pieces, but I've always made it as I need it. And at the same time we're working on this, John has been sending me pictures of some of the concepts he has for the lettering, for the side scoops, and the silver wheels, which are coming up very, very soon. That's going to be the next part of our project. So what I wanted to share, these are just some of the scrap pieces we have from working on other projects. There are various things you can buy. You can buy them on the internet. They're relatively expensive. This is end grain balsa. End grain balsa means the grain is going straight up and down with a layer of carbon fiber on each side. This is something, it has a use, it's structural. Typically in offshore racing, boats are made with end grain balsa. And so these sheets that I've made various parts on, the problem is this doesn't have the nice weave look that I want to match the rest of the MT-09 parts. Now, these are sheets with it looks like corrugated in between it, and it doesn't have a nice finish, but if we were making something structural in an aeroplane, this would be the material of choice. And of course we have other sheets here of various things, that very thin, very thick. Oh, I've used carbon fiber pretty much many, many years, I guess is the right word. And I have these scraps to deal with, and from years of modeling, it has taught me how to make patterns reasonably easily. I've shared that on yesterday's video. And all of these materials, they would be fine if they had the weave look. But I want to show how to make the material that'll have that real nice herringbone weave look in it. It really looks nice when it's done right. It's a little tricky. We're going to try to do it on this video. Now, a real easy way to make yourself what I call a buck, but it's not the right word, is you want to pick up a piece of glass or a mirror. A mirror is a good thing. Anything made out of glass, anything with a perfectly smooth surface. Because what's going to happen to the carbon fiber, now what I do is I borrow this from, we have old picture frames and stuff, and when I'm all done, I'll wash it down with Windex and put it right back. This will not get hurt in the process, hopefully. Famous last words. Anyway, if this is big enough, that's going to be great. If not, we'll have to make 2 of them. But I always have a stack of those extra picture frames. But having a piece of glass, it's this surface that we want to pick up and make a perfectly smooth. One surface, very smooth. We don't care about the other side. The other side you're not going to see. So the first part of this, before I even go anywhere, is I want to see if I'm going to be able to get, I want to have the herringbone running this way. I don't want it on an angle, so I would not be able to do this. I have to pick up a parallel edge. This thing still has the Cheerios stuff on it. Now, could I get 2 out of 1 piece here? Maybe, I don't know. We're going to be able to get 2 out of 1. So, and I know we'll be able to get 2. We get plenty of these. So, it looks like I'm going to have to make 2 sheets of this. And it's easier for me to make 2 smaller sheets than 1 big sheet because I only have this work area. I'm limited in my work area space. But anyway, so I know I'm going to make 2 sheets. I'll take another picture frame apart. I'll get these the first thing is cleaned up with some ordinary Windex. Just for my own, I like to work clean and neat. And once these are clean, I'll get them up off the ground so we can start our layup. So what I'm trying to do now with using Gorilla Tape, make little loops. Again, none of this is critical at all. It's just a way of just keeping that glass off the table is all we have to do. So that whatever goes over the edge, like a decoupage job, and again, nothing fancy. As long as that holds it in place while we're working on it. I never try to make things more complicated than they have to be. Keep it simple, and you'll still get the job done with no problem at all. So I wound up using 4 pieces of tape on an old can that's half full. That should be a good stable base for what we want to do. Okay, with those 2 pieces ready, they can just sit there because what we're going to do on a work table now is cut the carbon fiber. Dave Midgley and Dick Hewitt for donating this to our cause, sponsoring our channel, however you want to put it. And let's just see if we can get this to come out on the edge. Maybe I got to reverse it because I want to cut strips of it. To start with, I want them to be roughly the size of the glass. Before I actually cut this, what I want to do is take ordinary masking tape, blue tape, lay this out in such a way that I have a border around the edge of the piece. This will just keep the twill from unraveling or doing anything silly. And then what we'll do once we get 1 piece made that has a good border on it, pretty simple, we'll make. Now it's important to keep the weave on an angle that you want to have the weave on. So in the case of this, the weave is going this way. I don't know, we're going to make the piece that we're going to see, I want to have the weave going that way. So we can make 3 in the most efficient way, but the last one I'm going to have to cock the piece just so I can see that the weave is the way I want it. Now, another way of doing this that a lot of people do, and there's nothing, we may even do it, I don't know, I'm going to see how much carbon I have, is once you have a piece made out of carbon, the rest you can make out of e-glass, which is a lot cheaper. And we may even do that, I don't know yet. I'm going to see, I'm going to cut some of this up. And again, I try to work efficiently and of course, never waste anything if I don't have to. But having a blue tape on the edge is one of the good tricks of working with carbon fiber. Now to get the 2 pieces that I'm going to see, I want the grain, I call it the grain, to go in that direction, and I can flip that way. So I'm going to have to actually waste some here, and I'll save the scraps. But I'm going to have to see how the grain is going in this direction. I want the grain, when you look at the part, to go right down the edge if possible. So we will waste a little material here, but those will be the 2 parts that you actually see. Everything else will be in the back. So what I'll wind up with is 2 pieces with that orientation going in that direction, and 4 pieces where it's going on an angle. And then if it's not thick enough, I'm going to think about this. I may put a backer of e-glass on it, but right now I think that's going to be enough. So, and then I'll lay these all out, mark them, and they'll be all set. They'll be staged and ready to go. Just like a cook prepping up all the stuff like a sous chef would. Now I've marked the ones that are going against the glass as the glass side, and the other ones, it won't matter if the grain is going to be in the opposite direction. I think I'm going to go with just having 3 layers and see how that's, if it's not thick enough, I can always add a layer to the back after I cut the parts out. So I think this will be fine. This is, I believe, is 4 ounce, but I'm not sure. 6, I think it's 6 ounce. 4 ounce is the real light. This is a little bit heavier. And unfortunately, when you do want that grain orientation, there is some waste, but I always save the scraps. Now, an awful lot of making carbon fiber parts is just getting everything prepped up. Once you have everything prepped up, the rest of it's pretty straightforward. So all our material is cut out, or what I'll call the buck, for lack of a better word. Our bucks are ready, and we're just pretty much just going to try to figure out now how we want to exactly do this. And I want to carefully put all the scraps inside the roll the roll up in the plastic, and save that. And again, thank you Dave Midgley and Dick Hewitt. So with all scraps in place, it's just it's a no-brainer. You don't want this to get, in my case in the shop, I don't want it to get dirty, or we're in a humid cellar. Trying to keep it wrapped in plastic is a good investment. Now this is why I say, with limited workspace, if I were to try to make bigger sheets and bigger pieces of glass and mirrors, and it just gets really cumbersome. So having this size works for me. Get plenty of newspaper down on the workbench, because this part of it can get a little sloppy. It always gets sloppy. I wouldn't even think about doing this with clean clothes and or maybe no gloves. Boy, oh boy, would that be a mistake. Anyway, plenty of newspaper, because whatever's going to drip off the edge, I don't want it getting on the workbench. I have to chisel it off with a chisel. And in the case of the newspaper, we can just roll it up and throw it out. But now, there was a time when Dave Midgley used to have pieces of Teflon that we could work off. I don't have that anymore, and you don't really need it. You can do one of 2 things. We could use PVA. PVA would be fine so we can release the glass, or we can just take the equivalent of saran wrap and wrap it around, because this material does not stick to saran wrap. So we'll see if I have a new roll of saran wrap. I know I have some PVA, but the big thing is I don't want to ruin my workbench. Every time I do this, it does get sloppy. So the resin we're going to use for this project is West 105 207 hardener. Now the reason 207, it's a crystal clear hardener, and it'll make for a clearer that you'll be able to see to weave through the epoxy. And needless to say, it's by weight or by volume. Either way, you can read the back of the can and see in your particular case which is more convenient. If you're going to do a lot of this, they make these cool little pumps that you can just pump out so many pumps. But in the case of that we're using, I don't use this every day. Just as easy to mix it up by volume. So by volume, it's 3.7. So what happens is you just take one of these, 1 unit, and we use a clear plastic cup, and then almost 4, a little less than 4, and that's plenty close enough. We're not making a structural part. If we're making an airplane propeller, a wing spar, something structural, well, it's a whole different story then. Then we want to be exact, and we'd probably use Epon instead of West resin. This is it makes a beautiful finish on the part. Every time I've ever used it, this has been really good stuff. All the parts on the Black Ninja, all the carbon parts, the kick plates, the side covers, and the part under the windshield were made with that resin. That's what I have left over. And thank you, Turbo Steve, for donating jars. It's always good to mix in a clear jar rather than a cup or anything. I like to be able to see that I'm not making a mess out of the bottom or I have bubbles or anything. That's a really nice sized jar because it's got a big lip. I've got a non-wooden stirring stick, although I don't think that's critical with this resin, and it's a 3.7 to 1 mix. Now, the last time I did this, I showed the method of using saran wrap. I'm going to use Part-All this time. This is a polyvinyl alcohol. They call it PVA. It's relatively inexpensive, and you you need to put on a little bit of car wax, is always good, on one side of the glass. Let that dry, wipe it off, and put at least 1 or 2 coats of this on, and this makes a really nice, really smooth finish. Okay, so this is carnauba wax, but actually any kind of real carnauba wax. As long as it says carnauba wax, you're home free all. And what the process usually is, if you work in a molding shop, you would put on 2 to 3 coats, buff it off, don't leave any wax on. And so we're going to try to simulate that by getting this on the whole part and then put on some PVA. Now it'd be nice if we could spray it on, but unfortunately we don't have our gun, our PVA gun anymore, since we don't do that much molding anymore. So I'm going to put this on, let this sit for 5 minutes, and then buff it off with a perfectly clean microfiber, and then brush on the PVA. Okay, this is the second coat. You can use a microfiber, you can use, these are perfectly clean paper towels, and we're ready to put on the PVA. Now in a real mold shop, what they would do is you'd have a spray gun dedicated to PVA and go outside and spray the PVA. It would make it lay down real nice, but even brushing it on, it's fine. Now the idea is to get 2 or 3 coats of this on, let each coat dry. At the end it becomes like a skin, and then it wants to peel up, so you really don't need too much. In the past I've done it with 1 coat. In this case, if the worst happens, we just break the glass. These are just picture frame glasses anyway. There's not a lot of money tied up in it. Some's going to run off the edge. Whatever runs off the edge, not a big deal. That's why that's easier for me to work on. If I had one big giant thing here, what a pain it would be. Just figured the best of all worlds here, just to let this dry overnight, come back to it tomorrow, and we'll do the layup. Well, we have everything prepped, so tomorrow should be a piece of cake. And that PVA really does take, I guess you could dry it with a hairdryer. I've done that, but always better to just let it dry. And if you're going to do a lot of this, it's good to set up a dedicated spray gun and just keep it just for PVA. So the PVA has dried under a heating vent, and of course if you spray it, it's a lot better than if you brush it, but either way you just got to get some PVA on there. So the first thing we want to do is mix up the resin. 3.7 to 1 by volume is the approved thing. This is not ultra critical like some of the high-tech resins like Ippon or Huntsman. They need to be mixed a lot more accurately. This one is kind of friendly. If you're off a little bit, doesn't seem anything bad happens. This by the way, just, and I may have mentioned this before, this is supposed to dry crystal clear, which is why we're using it. It's a little more expensive than the other 205 and 206 are. But anyway, it's, when you're making these parts, compared to if you had to buy them in a store, it's not even a close choice. Anyway, we're going to mix up the resin, stir it with an arrow shaft, and we'll be ready to go. Now it's always a good idea to stir the resin, and when you think it's stirred, stir it a little bit more. When you go to molding school, they tell you, and I haven't been to molding school, but I've seen the videos, the molding schools always say one of the things that you can get wrong, if this is a 101 thing and they're teaching you this, is not to stir this enough. Well, I don't want to put it to the test, so I've always listened to what I learned on YouTube, and thank you to everybody that contributes things on YouTube. We're trying to add to that knowledge base, and hopefully you're enjoying the video. A good little tip, and I'm trying to put all the little information that I found handy. I use a little flux brush to spread the resin from time to time, but I always put a piece of tape up at the end, because these ends tend to be razor blades. You're working with gloves, it cuts through the glove, all of a sudden you got resin everywhere. Now, the whole idea of this whole operation is this surface, I want to be, it's as smooth as I can possibly make it. The PVA is dried. I am going to try to get that surface wet up to a point. Now this is where it gets tricky, because what I don't want to do, I don't want to disturb the PVA, so I just want to get the resin spread around a little bit if I can, and it's really just gently, I'm just holding the weight of the brush. I don't want to have it that I disturb that PVA. It's very delicate at this point in time. But now, if I were to skip this step, what I run the risk of is that in the final finish that I'm going to see, what will really happen is I'll have a spot with no resin. what I call a dry spot. There's probably a more scientific word for it. Another thing that's not a good idea to do is mix more resin than you can use in a half an hour. So normally I'm going to use 3 times that amount. I'll mix it in 3 batches, not try to mix it all at once. That's always a mistake. But the first thing is, and in this case, before I lay that cloth, the carbon cloth that has the grain going in the direction I want to see, because this is the only one of the cloths that I'm going to see the grain. So this is really easy peasy to figure out. Times what I've done, and it's been a mistake, is I've tried to skimp on the resin I put on the, let me put a little more on here in fact. Now when you make a structural part and you vacuum bag it and you do all that stuff, or like when I used to make propellers and you had double-sided molds and everything, well, everything is different. But what I'm trying to get across in this video is that it's relatively easy to make this type of material. And for some people it's a hobby unto itself to invent and make things. The material, if you buy it, it's not that expensive, but it's not cheap either. It's not like buying toilet paper or something. This is the step that really matters, that is really critical. Okay, so I've got this wet. Let's hope it's wet. It's as wet as it's going to be. Now I need to go over and get that first piece, the cloth with the good grain orientation. Now you remember I marked it glass side up. Well, that's exactly what we want to do here. Okay. Now again, I don't want to disturb this. I don't want that to be disturbed if possible. I don't want the grain going like that. Now it's very delicate at this point. You can move one of those threads, and in that case you've got a defect in your the final piece. Now you see the resin is coming up through this. It's kind of cut and dry here. Okay. Again, this is the part I don't want to compromise. I don't want to catch. Make sure that edge doesn't have a rough edge. I want it soaked. Now resin cures basically in a very simple thing. The warmer it is, and my shop is about 65 degrees. If I were to make it 72, I have a lot less working time with the resin. So if you're happy at a little cooler temperature, it'll give you more working time to make the part. And once we get this troweled on, and I want to make sure that piece, because it's that piece down there that's so important to get that we don't have any defects in it. I'm leaving plenty of resin up here, plenty. And just now that I have it soaked, I can start to press just a little bit to get out some of the air pockets that would maybe make a pinhole in the other side. Now, in this case, we're probably gonna, I don't know for sure, we're probably gonna clear coat this with the clear urethane or paint it blue, I don't know, or silver. I don't know yet what that final piece of the puzzle is gonna be, but once I have this material made, I'll certainly know more once this is done. And now I'm gonna spread this resin out. I know this can get to be boring, but if you see it once, what happens, this is the kind of thing you really only have to see once. I want to see shiny resin everywhere. I don't want to see any dry spots. Now I'll go get one of the pieces of cloth where the grain is going at an angle. Okay, this is one. We can just drop it in place. Basically do the same thing. Push the resin up through the cloth. By the way, all this material came from Dave Midgley and Dick Hewitt, who have been very generous in the past with me making model airplane parts and with the motorcycle parts. So now I would like to have the resin that's under there come up through before I add more resin. So I'm just going to be gentle and I'm going to be patient about getting this in. But this piece of carbon we're not going to see the grain on. So not quite as critical. Now we can basically take the rest of the resin, well, most of it, I shouldn't say all of it, because I want to have this, I don't want any dry spots. Just putting some of this in fast forward, but I think you get the idea here. I think you get the basic idea, and that's what this video is for. Okay, at this point, we've got them both sandwiched in pretty well. Now again, I want to get as much of this resin out here. Maybe I've got the right amount, but if I don't, I'll mix another batch. If I had mixed a double batch, I'd compromise how much time it was taking to cure. And then that's a problem if something happens that you lose a little work time, or you're just slow doing this. And then what I'll be doing while this is kicking off, say half an hour, 45 minutes, put some music on or a football game or whatever, and just keep doing just what I'm doing. I call it babysitting, to make sure the part stays down flat. Now you could put another piece of glass on top of this. There's a lot of ways you could do this. But for our purposes, the parts we want to make with this will be fine. Okay, now it's time to get the last piece. Drop that on, use the rest of the resin, or if we need more, we'll mix it and get that just sitting. And then it's going to have, once the third piece is on there, it's going to obviously have to sit under a heating vent overnight. Right, third and final piece going in. Same technology, same issue. I want the resin from the bottom to come up through. Again, in fast forward, we're doing the same thing we did for the first two sheets, and just get the resin to come up through and get it smooth. Now if I were to press too hard during this operation, what happens, I'll put a defect in the carbon, which it's a cosmetic defect, but it's still, I would like it to be as nice as possible. It looks like we're pretty close to having the right amount of resin. I don't think I'm going to have to mix anymore, but this went off pretty well. Alright, so the next thing is I'm just going to put this aside under a heating vent to dry, and in the meantime, while it's drying, every once in a while I'll walk over with my little trowel and just basically make sure everything is laying down flat. Okay, so right here we're right under a heating vent. That'll help. But it's still going to have to sit there 24 hours, that's for sure. I know we have enough room here. I put newspapers down. I'll do the other piece off camera, and then we'll be ready to get a final look at this before we turn in for the night. So before retiring here tonight, this is really, I think it's laid out pretty good. Tomorrow, we're right under a heating vent. Now, I jacked it up so it's closer to the heat. And tomorrow morning, or even another day, we give it an extra day, we'll be able to take this apart. This is one of the parts that we want to make. We'll be able to show how we can attach this. I hope I have a secret idea in my mind how to attach it. I don't know if it's going to work. Everything secret here is amazing, but we're just going to let this dry. This was a pretty good layup. It's a really 101. I try to share some basic, simple information that if you're interested in this, and I know a lot of people are, we get a lot of hits on our carbon fiber videos during a restoration. Anyway, this was a pretty good day. Now when we come back to this tomorrow, after 24 hours, we'll be able to pull the glass apart, see what these pieces look like, and that's usually the most fun you can have, making carbon fiber parts, getting them out of the mold. Now this morning, Karen had a bunch of errands for me to do, but when I get back to the shop, those parts should be all hardened up and ready to use, and we'll see. Can't wait to take a ride on that Ferris wheel. Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing how those parts are cured. They should be fully cured. They've been drying overnight. The birds agree. Those parts should be in great shape by now. Now they have been sitting up there overnight, and usually that means we're in great shape. Oh yes, oh God, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Under the heating vent is the way to go, because of course heat accelerates the cure of the resin. I wanted to show that to see the quality of the finish that you get from the PVA. You can get the same thing with saran wrap, but I think it's a little bit nicer with PVA. And of course, if you can spray, if you have a gun with PVA, even better. But that's a good release. And now we have material. I'll do the other one. Now we have material that we can make those custom MT09 parts on a future video. And we've already shown the pattern making on previous videos too. So now it's always the part when you're dealing with glass. Of course, you don't want to break the glass. I can clean the glass. And we really have two beautiful pieces of carbon fiber with the good grain orientation. These are going to make some beautiful custom parts on future videos. So that's one more piece of the puzzle of the MT09. And as I go through the day, John usually sends me some pictures of some more concept stuff he's working on, and thank you, John, of course. But this is going to make some really nice carbon fiber parts. Boy, that came out that's perfect. Now, and I hope this, I try to keep this video simple and reasonably long, lengthwise by fast forwarding some of it. But having that material, now a lot of people don't know, and I'll try to cover this on a future video. I can heat this with a heat gun and bend it around corners. And there's a little trick to doing that. We used to change the pitch of propellers that way for modeling, but there's a lot of other stuff. This was basically a 101. If you've never made a carbon fiber part, something like this will at least give you some confidence of what you can do. The test paint on the test wheel couldn't have come out any better. I really look forward to that, boy. That's coming up very soon. And our whole MT09 project is right on schedule for, and we're going to have every part of it on videos. We try to post a video every day. So this is one of the things that I really do enjoy working with carbon fiber. It's an easy material to work with. It gets a little sloppy and sticky, but in the end, when you have a piece of material like this, or you have a part, or you have a windshield for a motorcycle, or you have something, this can make a variety of parts just by being able to make this material and have that nice finish on it. I don't know if you can see how nice that finish really is under fluorescent light. You take this out in the sun and it's like a mirror. Anyway, I try to put the useful information on the video, try to share it in a way that makes sense without any any steps left out. And hopefully you have enjoyed it. Share it with your friends. And if you're new to our channel, I hope this was one of the things that gave you some good information that you can use or inspired you to make some parts of your own. What we try to do is on these videos is post a video every day of whatever we're doing in the shop, and in the summer some of the rides we go on, and sometimes those two things overlap. But it's always, the goal is to share useful information or share information relating to motorcycling, modifying motorcycles, painting them, riding them, going to track days, or just going on enjoyable rides when you just want to break away from reality. Motorcycles are a great way to get away from reality. A really good way. Hope you enjoyed the video. So if you enjoyed the video, I hope you share it with your friends. And of course, I hope, most of all, that we'll see you tomorrow. And thanks again for watching.